And now on the line is Matthew Seeley. Matthew is the chair of the Irish Electric Vehicle Association, or IEVA. Matthew, welcome to Near FM.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Okay, I don't know if I told you this, Matthew, before our interview, but I don't drive a car for a couple of reasons. But if I was to drive a car, I would buy an electric car because I've heard, of course, that they are very good for the environment. Before we talk about your work in the IEVA in general, Matthew, can you start off by telling me what is, in your view, in the IEVA so good or great about electric cars and vehicles?
Good question. So I suppose the big thing is there's a couple of aspects and a couple of ways you can look at these things. So the first one is probably where people came from originally. It's environmental. So the view behind them is that they're more environmentally friendly versus fossil fuel, petrol and diesel vehicles. They don't have zero CO2. They have zero CO2 tailpipe emissions, but they do have a carbon impact. But overall, they have a lower impact on the environment at the view. So obviously other things like public transport, walking, cycling, all those other sort of things are obviously better again. But when somebody has to have a vehicle and has to have a car, then obviously an environmental aspect, it's the first one you should go to. Secondly, that the big one is actually health. You know, it's because there is no tailpipe emissions that actually will improve the local environment. So, you know, people with asthma, people with respiratory diseases, etc., that may be in their community and where, you know, petrol and diesel cars are driving up and down past their home every day, it has an impact on that side of things where it will help people fundamentally on that side of things. And then the third one, which is the one where people come across it, is cost. So typically they're more expensive to buy up front. The, you know, initial cost of a vehicle is coming down on an ongoing basis. It's getting to what we call price parity. In some cases, it surpasses, which means it's equal or less than the cost of the equivalent petrol or diesel vehicle. But cost is the third thing. So it's a shift insofar as we're helping the environment, so lower CO2 emissions. We're going to improve the health of people around us because we're using less fossil fuels in how we move people around the place, and our costs should come down. They're the three big things I would say about an electric vehicle.
That's great. Yeah, I didn't know all that information. And can you tell me more about the IEVA, Matthew? Like why and when you were formed and the kind of work that you do?
So it was originally formed as a car club, I suppose is the best way to describe it, in 2015. We officially registered as a not-for-profit organisation about 3-4 years ago. And that was based on the fact that we were trying to do a bit more work for our members, and with handling any money, I suppose is the way to put it, would be it corporate sponsorship or individual members that were helping support us, to allow us as committee members to get to events, to help promote things. So in some of the costs that go with our website, etc., you know, in handling money, we set up a not-for-profit organisation so that, you know, everything is above board. People can see what goes on with the finances. They can go to, you know, the CRO, so we have a company returns, etc., and do it that way. But the big thing, I suppose, with it all is we're trying to give people the information that is there behind electric vehicles, trying to give them the good side of it, the downside of it. You know, let's be realistic, there are always downsides to every change that we have in life, and just to give people clear information that they can make a decision that's informed. So the last thing we want is somebody buying an electric vehicle that is wrong for them in their home, where they live, their way of working, how they get about the place, and then to have a terrible experience in an electric vehicle. There are a lot of people that can go into electric vehicles now, but it's not always to say that everybody is in the right place here and now, with be it infrastructure, be it their own home setup, etc. There's a lot of things that go in that way. So the big thing is information. And then the next thing out of that is what we can do to help people, and that's working with industry, that's working with the government, and trying to just bring information out there so people understand it clearly and that they can make informed decisions, and that's across the board for everybody.
Buying an electric car sounds to me like, from listening to you there, it's more complex than I thought it would be. I was looking at the IEVA website last night, Matthew, and I see that you're all actually volunteers working with the IEVA, aren't you?
We are indeed, yes. Yes, we've no paid employees, nothing that way. So everybody is a volunteer. We're all trying to do it out of our own goodness, I suppose, in some ways, but also we see the vision of where it needs to be, and to get something like this across the line and to help get it in the right direction so that people have an independent voice, I suppose, that we're not, we don't have a salary being paid by people who are trying to sell EV chargers or EV vehicles. We're independent of that. We would hope that people can come to us and look at it as independent advice and help, that they can make an informed decision that is the most suitable thing for them.
Yeah, I respect anyone like ourselves who does voluntary work, including the paperwork of voluntary organisations or groups, because the paperwork, I think, is the most boring part of the work, is it?
Yeah. Well, there's a bit of that, but I suppose we get to balance it quite nicely with going to events and getting to go to meet people. I suppose that's a big thing, and we have our EV meetups. We get to go to EV shows like the Nevo Electric Vehicle Show, where we get to meet people and just get to engage with them. So, there's the benefits, but there's always the bit that isn't the fun part of it. So that happens too.
Okay. What inspired me most recently to get in touch with you for this interview, Matthew, is that I saw it reported on the national media last week that the sales of electric cars in Ireland are going up again. Over the last year, I have read that the sales of the vehicles in a couple of places are going down. And I know that the Chinese market is huge, and that is a market something we don't hear a lot about in Ireland. Matthew, from a national and global point of view, are electric cars and vehicles continuing to grow big time every year?
Yes, the answer is yes. The big one is, and I think people don't realise it, is in China at the minute, over half of their vehicles are electric vehicles. Now, be that fully electric or plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. So, a petrol engine, but with a large enough battery that you could maybe do 100 kilometres of range on it, which is where the original electric vehicles started out. That's all they could do. So having that sort of range plus a petrol engine in a plug-in hybrid is quite a good situation that way for some people that aren't sure about it yet. So yes, overall it's growing substantially. Over half of EV sales in China is there at the minute. Globally, we're seeing a number of countries like Norway and Denmark are getting close to 100%. So it's definitely moving that way. And here in Ireland, yes, we're up over 2024. We're up ever so slightly over 2023. So we had a dip last year. So number of different reasons for that could be attributed. 2025 was the introduction of new EU fleet emissions rules. So this year is more restrictive for the manufacturers and how many vehicles they can sell and how high the emissions can be. So electric vehicles had to be more prominent in 2025 on. So that in part could have curtailed how many EVs were sold last year. There was supply constraints. There was, issues in the Suez Canal with, boats trying to get through there. So they had to go around the tip of Africa, which added time to how long a ship takes to get from Asia over to Europe. So number of different factors for sure. But it's definitely going up. It's going up worldwide. There is no two ways about it. And in the last month or so, there's been a number of OEMs. So I don't want to say specific brands, but there was a couple of European brands, a couple of Asian brands, where they're, very senior people were coming out to say that while electric wasn't here and now straight away, or they weren't fully committed to fully electric in 2025, 2027, whatever the case may be, that their products that they are currently developing or will develop, they're kind of going, electric is going to win hands down. That's their views at this point in time. So even the OEMs see it themselves that electric is where vehicles are going to go because they can deliver a better product for the end customer, and that's where it's going to go.
OEMs are the car manufacturers, are they?
Yeah, so your BMWs, your Mercedes-Benz, Audi, etc.
Okay, you've probably heard this question a lot, Matthew, but do you think it's only a matter of time before all vehicles, cars and vehicles in general, are electric?
Yes, absolutely. I think we're a long way away from that being everything on the road. If even that, there's always going to be classic cars. There's always going to be enthusiasts around, classic vehicles. So we see it at the minute, somebody's buying a car from the 80s or 90s or 70s, for argument's sake, 1970s. There's older vehicles that are still in people's sheds somewhere in Ireland that they keep on the road. So we're always going to have petrol vehicles. But for the majority of people, in terms of, what people use to get to work, to go to the shops, the normal vehicles that we use to get around the place, yes, absolutely, electric is where it's going to go. They're nicer to drive. They're typically easier to drive. They're going to give people a cost saving. And even if we ignore the environmental aspect and health side of things, if that's not what you're concerned with, the cost is going to come down. They're easier to use. They're just nicer to drive. They have little features that kind of win out as well, where you don't have to defrost the car in the morning. It's automatically scheduled to defrost your car in the morning. So, like I've had it in the winter time where it's snow outside, I don't have to come out and start up my car, wait for it to heat up and try to clean the snow off it. The car's already done it for me before I've walked out the door, because it just heats the vehicle, which melts the snow outside of it. So there are things where people, when they get into an electric vehicle, they will kind of realise that, actually when they go back, it's maybe not as good as they thought it was. So the product is better. So I think when people try it, they will enjoy it.
Okay, it's great talking to you, Neil. Matthew, before you go, do you have any idea how long it will take in Ireland before most cars are electric in the country?
Great question. The government target was 2030 for all new vehicles to be electric. I don't think that's going to be met, in part because the EU laws are saying 2035 is when the ban on petrol, diesel will come about. So we're at least, we'll call it 10 years away from that European ruling where electric vehicles are all that can be sold. There is always argument that they say that should be pushed out or whatever the case may be, but I think there's enough time there for it to get to that point in time. So I would be confident 2035 would be where we will see all new vehicles being electric, and people will have a lot of choice. They'll also have a lot of choice, not only new, but second-hand at that point in time. So, a 10-year-old electric vehicle is still going to be quite good at that point in time. I have my main Citroen that I have day-to-day. I'm probably going to buy a second vehicle now in the next couple of months. I'm going to buy a second electric car, but I'm going to go second-hand, probably a couple of years older. And it's going to serve its purpose perfectly. So it's no different than any other vehicles. But, yeah, we're a few years away, but I suppose as we are as an association, we're going to try to push it quicker. We can give people the information as to do it as quickly as possible, but always it's going to take a bit of time, but we'll get there.